this week with crews punching holes in walls, in the floor, in the yard, looking for Escobar's hidden spoils.
Pablo Escobar tried to beat the banks by turning Colombia itself into a giant safe. He shoved money into walls, fields, and mansions from Medellín to Miami.
We're talking billions of dollars in cash.
He was spending $2,500 a month on rubber bands to hold the stacks of money together.
And people are still hitting those hiding spots by accident. But the newest discovery is the one nobody wanted to find.
Investigators in Miami found $22 million concealed in 5-gallon containers.
It shows the part of his fortune that never stopped causing damage. The crazy way Pablo stored his cash. By the late 1980s, Pablo Escobar was not just another drug dealer. He was one of the richest criminals in history, with estimates putting his net worth at around $25 to $30 billion at his peak, enough to rank on rich lists next to global business owners. His cartel was earning an estimated $420 million every single week from cocaine sales, which adds up to almost $22 billion a year. Most of that money did not arrive as neat electronic transfers. It came in as mountains of small paper notes in United States currency, stuffed into duffel bags, boxes, and suitcases. Planes and trucks moved nothing but cash. There were houses where every bedroom was turned into storage. Imagine rooms where the bed is gone and the floor is covered with waist-high stacks of bundled money, where someone has to walk along the top of the bundles just to get from one side to the other. The cartel had so much physical cash that the question was no longer how to earn more, but where to put what they already had. At first, Escobar tried the tricks that rich criminals around the world use. He pushed money through fake companies on paper, called shell companies. He sent money into bank accounts in other countries, called offshore accounts. He bought real estate in Miami and Panama, and used hotels, apartments, and office buildings as ways to turn dirty cash into clean rent and sales. But there was a limit. Governments in Colombia and the United States were watching large bank deposits more closely. New rules forced banks to report suspicious movements, and accounts were frozen. Every new bank account was a risk. Every wire transfer left a trail that police could follow. So Escobar's group made a very direct choice. If banks were becoming a trap, they would stop using banks. They would hide the cash themselves. The vault would no longer be a steel room under a building. The vault would be any place that could keep money dry and out of sight. Out of this choice came the system that people in Colombia still talk about today, the caletas. A caleta means a hidden stash. It can be a space inside a wall, a small secret room, a sealed drum in the ground, or any other place where you can hide cash, guns, or records so that no one sees them. In the book written by his brother and former accountant, Roberto Escobar describes how they built these caletas inside houses in Medellín, cutting openings in the walls and closing them up again so that even the police could stand in the room and never know what was behind the plaster. The same trick was done in safe houses all over the city. Cartel crews bought plastic barrels, filled them with wrapped bills, sealed them, and buried them in the ground in farm fields or jungle clearings. In some houses, they poured fresh concrete over bundles laid under the floor, turning entire rooms into heavy, solid safes that only they knew about. In warehouses, they built false partitions so that one side held normal goods, and the other side, hidden behind a thick wall, held sacks of money. Even wardrobes and kitchen cabinets could hide doors into narrow spaces where a person could crawl in and sit among stacks of cash if the police came to search. All of this came with a strange problem that almost no normal rich person ever has to think about. Paper money rots. Roberto Escobar has said that each year the cartel simply wrote off around 10% of its cash because rats ate it in storage or it was destroyed by water and humidity. Calculated against their earnings, that meant losing around $2.1 billion a year and barely noticing. The cartel was also spending around $2,500 every single month just on rubber bands to keep the bundles of cash tied together. In simple terms, They had so many stacks of bills that keeping them neat and stopping the rats from eating them became a full-time job. The climate made things worse. Much of Colombia is hot and wet. Basements and buried drums sweat, plastic tears, concrete cracks. That is why when people break into old caletas today, they often do not find crisp notes ready to spend. They find bundles stuck together with mold, chewed by insects, and stained by water, where only some of the outer layers are still usable. Escobar did not scatter these caletas randomly. There was a rough map in his head. One major cluster of hiding places was in and around his country estates, especially his most famous property, Hacienda Nápoles. The ranch sat east of Medellín and covered about 8 square miles. Escobar turned it into a private playground with an airstrip, a helipad, a bull ring that could hold around 1,000 people, swimming pools, classic cars, and a small private zoo with zebras, giraffes, kangaroos, and the now famous hippos. Planes landed there with drugs and with cash. People who worked on the land later spoke of pits being dug near the airstrip and among the animal enclosures, then filled and sealed while armed men watched. Another cluster was in the city itself. In Medellín, Escobar and his lieutenants owned apartment blocks, suburban houses, and commercial buildings. Places like the Monaco apartment building and the Los Olivos house are known today because of raids and bombs, but many other addresses never made headlines. Inside them, builders put in hollow walls, fake closets, and hidden basements. A visitor might see a normal living room with family photos and a television. Behind one picture, there might be a switch that opened a narrow door into a space full of money. In other houses, the hiding place was under a bathroom floor, with tiles that could be lifted in the right order. These urban caletas made it easy to move cash around the city and to grab it quickly if there was a need to pay bribes, fund lawyers, or move during a police crackdown. Beyond the estates and the city blocks were the rural farms all over Antioquia and the Magdalena Valley. These did not always belong to Escobar on paper. In some cases, landowners were forced to rent a field for a night while trucks arrived. Men dug deep holes, lowered in barrels or wrapped bricks of money, and then filled the pits again. Villagers have spoken over the years about being ordered at gunpoint to dig, and then being warned never to return to that patch of ground. In those areas, a simple banana field or cow pasture could hide several fortunes under the soil. By the early 1990s, this whole system had grown into something almost impossible to count. Escobar had created hundreds of hidden cash spots across the country and even outside it, and each one was fully known only to a small circle of trusted people. Some of those people were killed, some disappeared, some made deals with the state or with rival groups and never came back to dig up what they had buried. Law enforcement could seize houses and farms, but they did not have a master map showing every drum, pit, and wall that held cash. When Escobar finally died, it did not close the book on his money. It opened the biggest treasure hunt in Colombia's history. The treasure hunt that started the day he fell. In early December 1993, on a red tile roof in Medellín, Pablo Escobar went down under police gunfire. Minutes later, his body was on the news. As soon as it was clear he was dead, another race began away from the cameras. Police teams, prosecutors, rival gunmen, and people inside his own circle all started moving toward his houses, ranches, and office buildings, thinking the same thing. There was still money hidden out there, and whoever got there first would walk away with it. Colombian police had spent years trying to map Escobar's world. They had lists of properties in his name and in the names of trusted frontmen. When he died, those lists turned into targets. For the first time, those addresses looked like open cash registers to everyone involved. The state had a tool ready for this moment, a legal rule called extinción de dominio. In plain language, it means that if the government can show that a house, a farm, a car, or a company comes from crime money, the owner loses it, and the state can then take it and turn it into something public. In the months after Escobar's death, prosecutors and a special unit of the National Police started freezing and seizing anything tied to him. One of the biggest prizes was Hacienda Napoles, the huge ranch he had turned into his private playground with a zoo, a bull ring, and an airstrip. After his death, the state took control of the land. Back in Medellín and nearby towns, the hunt was more direct. Police units hit apartment blocks and houses that had been linked to the cartel during the long manhunt. They searched fancy mansions and modest family homes because both had been used as safe houses. Officers tapped on walls to hear if they were hollow, checked floors for fresh cement, and watched for places where the brickwork did not match. In some homes, they found hidden spaces with plastic-wrapped bundles of cash, weapons, and small notebooks listing debts and payments. In others, there were only scraps that showed something had been pulled out before they arrived. Reports and later research describe raids where a few $100,000 came out of a wall or a couple of $1 million were dug up in a yard. There were also piles of ledgers, keys for bank boxes, and papers that pointed to accounts and companies that could then be frozen or taken. By normal standards, these were huge seizures. Compared with the total fortune the Medellín cartel had handled over the years, they were only a slice. At the same time, the state was emptying another kind of vault, the things Escobar had bought to enjoy his money. Police and courts moved to take his collections of cars, his planes and helicopters, and his private zoo animals. Rivals had already blown up some of his property by then, but what was left still showed how wildly he had spent. While the official hunt moved through the courts, another group was hunting on its own terms. This was Los Pepes, a name taken from a Spanish phrase that means people persecuted by Pablo Escobar. It was made up of enemies of Escobar, including members of rival drug groups and gunmen tied to right-wing squads. They were backed with money from the Cali cartel and are widely believed to have shared information with some officers who also wanted Escobar gone. Los Pepes went after his network with street violence. They shot lawyers and accountants, bombed houses, and left bodies with warning signs. When word spread that a house, farm, or warehouse might hold cash or records, it was often these men who showed up first. Witnesses and later reports suggest that Los Pepes stripped some properties, pulling out cash, art, and valuables, and only then let the police move in. In some places, they burned or blew up buildings after looting them, so no one would ever know how much money had once been hidden there. Rival groups were not the only ones trying to turn his hidden wealth into their own. While gangs clawed at what was left, the family faced a different kind of pressure. Escobar's widow and children were moved under protection and later left the country, but not before prosecutors pushed them to give up many of the obvious assets still in their names. His son, who later changed his name and wrote about his father's life, has said in interviews that the family did not walk away with anything close to the billions people imagine. Inside the wider family, distrust ran deep. In one of his books, the son accused his aunt, Alba Marina Escobar, of quietly taking control of some of the secret stashes and properties after his father's death. He says that money kept in certain hiding places disappeared before he could reach it, and that other relatives cut their own deals to stay alive or out of prison. Those claims remain his word rather than proven court facts, but they show how quickly loyalty cracked once the man who held the whole network together was gone. The math still refused to line up. During his peak years, Escobar's cartel is believed to have handled tens of billions of dollars in drug money. Yet when reporters and researchers look at what the Colombian government can prove it has taken in cash, accounts, and property, the total is only a fraction of that. Add in what was grabbed by groups like Los Pepes, what was stolen or hidden by people inside his own world, and what simply decayed in the ground, and you are still left with a large gap between what should exist and what anyone can point to. If this man earned that much, where did the rest go? That gap would soon pull in construction workers, nervous relatives, television crews, and random farmers, turning them into the next wave of people who stumbled over Pablo Escobar's hidden vaults. The new discoveries popping out of nowhere. In Medellín, one of Pablo Escobar's nephews says he did something most people would never dare to do. He took a hammer, walked to the wall of his own apartment and started breaking it open. He was sure something was inside. Later he told reporters that he kept seeing a man walk into that part of the wall and vanish, almost like a strange memory that would not leave him alone. When he finally knocked the bricks out, he hit plastic. Inside the hidden space, he found a bag that he says held about $18 million in old banknotes, wrapped up with a typewriter, satellite phones, a gold pen, and an undeveloped roll of film. He also said the money did not look like a fresh win. The smell hit him first. He later described it as a stench many times worse than a dead animal. Some of the notes were rotting, eaten by time, water, and insects. On Miami Beach in Florida, there once stood a big waterfront mansion that United States agents say belonged to Pablo Escobar in the 1980s. The property, more than 6,500 square feet, was seized by federal authorities in the late 1980s and later sold. In 2014, a fast food chain founder bought it, and 2 years later, he had it knocked down. As the last walls fell in early 2016, a construction worker noticed the floor sink a little and metal showed through the rubble. Buried in the concrete was a safe. It was about 2 feet by 2 feet and weighing up to 700 pounds, heavy enough that it had to be moved with care. The new owner sent the safe straight to a bank vault and said it would stay locked until he finished a documentary about Escobar's link to the house. Later coverage said that a second safe was also found hidden under the floor and then vanished, reportedly stolen before anyone could log it. Years later, there has been no public opening of the first safe. Not every find turns into a headline or a court case. Some workers quietly split what they find and say nothing, especially in rural areas where people still fear the name Escobar or the gangs that came after him. Others turn the money in and accept a small reward, then decide not to talk about it again. In that environment, it was almost guaranteed that one massive farmer story would go viral. Around 2015, Spanish reports and then English blogs began repeating the same tale. A 65-year-old farmer named Jose Mariana Cartolos, the story said, had received a government grant to plant palm trees on his land. While digging an irrigation trench, he hit several large blue barrels filled with cash. The total amount was said to be about $600 million, all in United States banknotes, supposedly part of Escobar's missing fortune. If that story were fully true, it would be one of the largest cash hoards ever found in one place. But when people began to look closely at the photos and details, serious problems came up. On Reddit and other forums, users pointed out that some of the $100 bills shown in connection with the story looked like a 1996 design, printed 3 years after Escobar died. Other writers who study Escobar's hidden money have noted that there is no clear official record of such a huge seizure, and some have said plainly that the $600 million tale has never been verified. While rumor sites and social media chase giant numbers, some people have tried to hunt for real vaults in a more careful way. In 2017, the Discovery Channel launched a show called Finding Escobar's Millions. 2 former CIA officers, Doug Lau and Ben Smith, went back to Colombia with old intelligence reports, informant stories, and a clear goal: find buried cash and other loot linked to Escobar. They brought in Paul Baumann and his geophysics team to help them search the ground without digging every inch. Baumann's group used metal detectors and a tool called ground-penetrating radar. These are machines that send signals into the soil and measure how they bounce back. Changes in the signal can show there is metal, a barrel, or a space where Earth has been disturbed before. With maps, drones, and these tools, the team walked across farms, jungle paths, and old cartel sites, looking for shapes that did not match normal rock and dirt. One of the clearest moments came in a stretch of thick jungle in a place called El Oro, which used to be part of Escobar's operations. The team believed an escape route ran through the trees there. Their devices picked up a strong signal from a large metal object buried on that route. After a long dig, they pulled out a big barrel, exactly the kind of thing Escobar's men were known to bury. But when they finally levered the lid open, the barrel was empty. That scene kept repeating in different forms. The shapes in the ground showed that someone had gone to a lot of trouble years ago to bury something there. In many cases, someone else had clearly come back, dug it up, and taken it away. As Bauman later put it, Colombia is a huge country, and by the time television cameras arrived, the best of the buried fortune had often already moved on. What matters now is not just how much cash is still in the ground, but who ended up with the money that was pulled out long ago, and how the land, homes, and symbols he once used as vaults are being turned into something else. How Escobar's fortune still affects Colombia. Today, Hacienda Napoles, Pablo Escobar's old ranch, does not look like a place where people are still searching for buried barrels of cash. Many of the old buildings were torn down or rebuilt, and the property was turned into a family theme park. It's now a mix of theme park, farmland, and zoo, sitting on rolling green hills in northwest Colombia. The park now brings in well over 1 million visitors a year, riding water slides and taking photos with fiberglass dinosaurs while real hippos roam in nearby rivers and fields. But in October 2025, the government quietly turned part of that ranch into something else again. A kind of open vault for people who lost everything during the years of war. President Gustavo Petro announced that about 120 hectares of that land were being handed to female farmers who are victims of the conflict. 120 hectares is roughly 300 acres, a big slice of prime land in a region where many poor families were pushed off their farms by drug groups and armed factions. The head of Colombia's National Land Agency called it a historic victory. One of the women who received land said she finally had land for life after years of instability. Hacienda Napoles also shows how messy it all was. The hippos he brought in as status animals escaped and started breeding in the surrounding rivers after his death. Biologists now describe them as an invasive species that damages crops, threatens local people, and puts stress on native wildlife. The government has had to spend money on population control plans for these animals, and there are constant arguments about whether to sterilize them, move them, or cull them. Security studies and court documents show another kind of vault that survived long after he was gone. La Oficina de Envigado, a crime group that grew out of Escobar's original debt collection office, still operates in and around Medellín. It started as an enforcement arm of his cartel and later turned into a syndicate that runs extortion, contract killings, and drug distribution for many other groups. The United States Treasury has sanctioned it as a major trafficking and money laundering organization, and European and Colombian reports describe it as one of the most influential mafia structures in the city. The wealth and power stored here are not piles of cash in a field, but control over neighborhoods, businesses, and fear. This is part of why some people who stumble on a stash keep quiet. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.